Welcome to the LeapFrogBI Getting Started video series. My name is Paul Felix. I'm the founder of LeapFrogBI, and I'd like to thank you for your interest in the LeapFrogBI platform. We've put a lot of work into this platform, and we're very confident that if you'll invest just a little bit of your time in understanding how the platform works, you are going to quickly become a much more valuable developer, and you're going to benefit the organization that you represent greatly. Now, in this video series, we're going to get you started quickly. As the name implies, we've seen that the biggest obstacle to adoption is simply getting started, getting your hands dirty, building your first couple of components, and seeing the major benefits that the platform has to offer. So we're going to get past that obstacle very fast. Let's get started. All right, so first of all, we're going to break this video series down into 3 bite-sized chunks. First, we're going to make sure you're prepared for success. Make sure you have the right software installed and configured. In this same video, we're going to create a few stage components, profiling your source systems and creating some stage components. In the second video, we're going to be building all of the data flow required to take the data out of those stage components and load a target dimensional model. And finally, in the third video, we're going to be queuing a build and actually deploying and loading the data into that target dimensional model. So let's get started here with the first requirement, which is to make sure that you are prepared for success. These are the requirements. You need to have SQL Server installed. Obviously, LeapFrogBI is going to deploy to SQL Server. It is an agile SQL Server data warehousing platform. You can consume data from any source, but the target environment is going to be SQL Server. You need to have these services installed and configured: the database engine, integration services, reporting services, and you also need to have your tools ready, SQL Server management tools, Management Studio, as well as, depending on the edition or the version of SQL Server that you're running, you need to have BIDS or SQL Server Data Tools for BI installed. I'm going to link to all this. You can go download a free trial of the SQL Server platform and install that, and you'll be good to go. Next, you need to have AdventureWorks installed. This is what I'm going to be using in this video series as my source data set. You don't have to use that. If you would like to follow along and use your own source data, that's great. But I'm going to be using AdventureWorks as the source data for this video series. And finally, Microsoft Excel is going to be used. We're going to be using this in the profiling phase of the process, which we're about to step into. So Excel is helpful in making some of that work a little easier. All right. So what are we going to do? Before we begin any development here, I want to at least point out that it's probably obvious, but you have to go out and collect your business requirements before you begin any development. I'm going to be giving you the business requirements. Right now, I'm going to show you exactly what our target model is going to be. It's going to be this simple little 3-dimension, 1-fact dimensional model. Obviously, this is a very simple requirement, but the idea here, once again, is not to go through and provide all the details about every part of dimensional modeling that LeapFrogBI is capable of delivering. We just want to get your hands dirty quickly so you can see how the platform functions. So I'm going to be giving you, I'm going to be simulating having already done all that source system research. I'm going to provide the source data for you, and I'm going to provide that target data model. Next, it's very helpful if you understand this foundation design pattern. LeapFrogBI is not going to force you to use any design pattern. You can go out and build basically any type of data flow that you like. However, we're going to be using this foundation design pattern because it includes a lot of the steps that we need to have in a resilient data flow. I'm not going to describe this in detail, so I'll link to some resources where you can go read more about this design pattern. But for now, I'm going to give you a high-level overview of what our data flow is going to look like. What steps are we going to go through between collecting data from our source and loading it into our target model. Okay, so first of all, our data source once again is AdventureWorks. We're going to first collect a set of data and load it into stage tables. This is a volatile stage area, meaning we're going to truncate and load the stage tables every time we load the stage, every time we complete the staging process. In typical scenarios, we'll be incrementally extracting data from the source. We'll collect the deltas. But in this example, I'm going to skip all of that complexity, and we're just going to do a full collection from our source. After we stage the data, we're going to load a persistent staging area. This is a consolidation of all distinct versions of records that we ever collect from a source system. This is a very important step. Again, it's not absolutely required. You can skip this step if you like, but we're going to be including it in our data flow for this video series. With the PSA in place, we have a new reliable source. We know how it behaves. Records are not going to be overwritten. Records are not going to be deleted or hard deleted from PSA. We're going to have a reliable source. With PSA in place, we're going to take that data and load it into our target model. There's several steps we're going to complete during that process. We want to load data incrementally into that target model, meaning we want to only process the unprocessed records into that target model. So we're going to have a sourcing step in here. And then we're going to perform some number of transformations, whatever it might be, aggregations, filters, pivots, basically any type of transformation to the data. And then finally, we're going to verify that data's granularity before we try to load it into that target dimension or fact. Once that load process completes, we'll come back over here and we'll mark those records as having been processed. So basically there's two phases to development, which is how these videos have been broken out. First, we're going to stage the data, and then we're going to do all of this. We're going to create a PSA, and we're going to load that target model. Okay, so let's not waste any more time here. We're going to create this staging step. I'm going to jump over here to my target environment. And if you haven't already done so, then click on the register link and register for a free trial account. I'm going to go ahead and log in here. Once I log in for the first time, I want to go over to the project area. This is the project side of the LeapFrogBI platform. And by default, you'll have a single project here. I'm going to edit this project. I'm going to call this my Getting Started project. And let's call it description Quick Start. And I'm going to save that. Now, by default, this first project has a target of SQL Server 2008. I'm going to be using SQL Server 2014. So I'm going to go ahead and change this project's target environment to 2014. This is a very important benefit of metadata-driven development, by the way. You can develop a project in any version of SQL Server and then later go back and change that project's target platform. And then after you queue a build for that new platform, all of your project will then be able to be deployed to the new version. So even if I develop in 2008, I can later change my target to 2014, and it's going to regenerate all of that code with the applicable target environment in mind. Okay, so I have my project set up here. There's a lot of settings in the project area, but we're going to skip all that, and we're going to jump straight over here to bulk profile, stage bulk profile. There's a number of ways to stage your data, or create stage components, but we're going to be using I think it's the quickest way, which is by doing it in bulk. And I want to also mention that LeapFrogBI never connects to any source system, nor does it ever connect to any destination. This is much different from other tools that you probably are familiar with. We're going to be providing to LeapFrogBI the description of our source data, not the actual data itself, just the description, the metadata, the data that describes the data. With that, we're going to go through the entire development process by manipulating that data, basically, using a user interface to define our project. Okay, so to get started, I need to download this little profile generator and save it to my local environment. I've already done that, so let me go show you what you get when you download that guy. You get this little basic set of assets, an Excel file, a little executable that's going to help us generate the profiles or collect the descriptions of our source data. And then I went ahead and created this profiles folder, which is where I'm going to put my profiles once they're generated for me. All right, so let's first look at this Excel file. Now, in this Excel file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate having completed all of that source system research. And I'll attach this Excel file to this video's support site page, so you can open this exact file up and look at it as well. I've already filled it out here. It only requires a couple of inputs. What type of provider will I be using to connect to my source data? I'm going to use OLEDB. What's the connection string to connect to that source data? I provided my data source here, which is my local server. I've actually got a local instance, a default instance of SQL Server installed. The initial catalog, which is going to be AdventureWorks 2014. The provider, I'm using 2014, so I'm going to be using SQL Native Client 11. And that's basically it. The rest of it's pretty static. Next, I'm going to provide a name of the profile that I want to create. I'm generating a profile here. And then finally, I'm dropping in a piece of SQL. And this SQL is actually an expression in SSIS language. All that really means at this point is you need to wrap the SQL in quotes. That's it. You're creating a string. So you're creating a SQL string that's wrapped in quotes. Okay, so I have my 3 profiles in here. One for product, because we're going to create a product dimension that's based on this data, a customer dimension, and then our fact data will be based on the sales source. We're also going to create a date dimension, but we don't need to source that because LeapFrogBI doesn't need a source to create a date dimension. Now, with that in place, all I'm going to do is open up this little profile generator, which, by the way, if you're using some of the later versions of Windows operating system, you'll need to right-click on this, go to Properties, and unblock it. Because once you download things from the internet, by default, they're going to be blocked. So just right-click, go to Properties, and unblock. Now, what you'll get is this little profile generator. It requires 2 inputs. One is the Excel file I just showed you, which lists out 1 row per profile that we want generated. And second, a location where the profiles are going to be saved. I'll click Create Profiles, and we're done. So let's go look at what was created. I got a log file that, of course, you can look at this. If there's any issues, it'll describe what the errors are. I'm going to delete that. I have 3 other profiles here, which, by the way, are SQL Server Integration Services packages, which contain now the metadata that describes the source. So I'm just going to right-click on those and compress them. I'll rename this GS for getting started. So now in this zip file, I have 3 profiles that represent the description of the data that I would like to stage. Let's go stage the data. All right, before I actually upload that archive, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of connections in the LeapFrogBI platform so that I can refer to those connections by a number of components as we move forward. So let me do that here and show you how it's done. So I'm going to go to Connection, Create New. I'm creating a SQL Server connection, so I'll use a SQL Server native client. There's a number of connection types that you can create, but for now we'll keep it simple and just use a SQL Server connection. My first connection I'm going to create will be for my source. And my source is AdventureWorks, so I'll put in my server name and AdventureWorks for the database name. And then I'm going to create a few more connections. I'll create one, which is where I'm going to put my stage data. And I'm going to call this database my target database. I'm going to call it Getting Started. Now, keep in mind, I'm not going to create any of these assets by hand. All the DDL, the schema management is all done by LeapFrogBI. All I need to do is tell the system what I would like to have created. All right, so Getting Started will be the name of the database, and the name of the schema, which I'll do schema separation here. You don't have to do it that way. I'll do it this way, though. I'll call the schema Stage. All right, I'm going to do the same thing 2 more times. Be right back. Okay, I got all my connections created. Let me quickly show you what I have here. I showed you AdventureWorks when I created that one. I created a stage connection, which is just a connection to my target Getting Started database with a stage schema. And then I did the same thing 3 more times. I actually created one for an area for my transformations, which I'll put in a transform schema. Created an area for my PSA, that persistent staging area. And then also for my target model, my target model will be in a DW schema. All right, with all my connections in place, I'm ready to complete this staging process. I'm going to go ahead and give this bulk profile batch a name. I'll call it GS. The component type, I'm going to be creating a SQL Server native client staging process. So I'm collecting data from AdventureWorks. It happens to be on SQL Server, so I'm going to use that provider. The source will be AdventureWorks. And the destination, I'm going to put this in the destination that's described by my stage connection. Lastly, I'm going to go and navigate to that little zip file that I created and upload those packages. Now my stage process is basically complete. I have provided LeapFrogBI all the information I need to have those stage components generated for me. And what LeapFrogBI is going to do now that we've queued a bulk profile job, is it's going to process that job and generate those stage components for me. Okay, so once the job is complete, we'll see that bulk profile has been completed. We can click on any of the stage components that were created for me. I can see that I have a stage component here. It's placing the data in my destination connection called stage, and the component details will give me all the details about that stage component, specifically which fields, what data types, and so on are going to be included, and a description of the actual source query that we provided. Now, we are done with the stage process. We've created now our stage components. In the next video, we're going to be completing all of the rest of that data flow. We're going to do it very fast, and you're going to see very quickly how beneficial this platform is to you. So stick around, and we'll see you in video number 2 of the Getting Started video series.